Before these machines existed, feeding your family meant breaking your back with a shovel for hours in the hot sun. Then one farmer built a spinning blade that chewed through solid dirt like butter, and it started a war between inventors. 10 machines, 50 years. Each one secretly rewrote how humanity grows food, and almost nobody remembers their names today. One was built by a bankrupt car company. Another weighed just 20 pounds and changed gardening forever. Number 10. The Gravely Model L and its secret weapon. Let's start in the 1940s with a machine that didn't even use tines the way you'd expect, and yet it broke more virgin ground in America than almost anything else. The Gravely was a two-wheeled walk-behind tractor, and it was an absolute tank. But here's the part everyone forgets. The Gravely's most powerful attachment wasn't a normal tiller at all. It was called the rotary plow. Instead of a horizontal shaft flinging soil backward, the rotary plow spun a set of curved blades on a near-vertical axis, carving into the earth on its side and throwing the dirt sideways. And it went deep. A single pass could rip through packed sod up to a foot down. Gardeners at the time swore the thing could turn out a basketball-sized rock and you'd barely feel a bump in the handles. Now here's the wild engineering detail. On the Gravely, the rotary plow head was so aggressive that on certain models it wasn't just an attachment, it actually helped pull the whole machine forward and steer it. The blades bit into the ground and hauled the tractor along. Gravely had this rotary plow figured out before World War II. You can find it documented in their Model L manuals from the late 1930s, and it stayed in the lineup for decades. The one catch? The Gravely ran a front-mounted power takeoff, meaning all that spinning fury lived right in front of the operator. It was brutally effective, but it demanded respect. Get careless, and that plow would remind you who was boss. This is why the Gravely earned a cult following that survives to this day. It wasn't the cheapest, it wasn't the lightest, and it definitely wasn't the safest. But for tearing open ground that had never been farmed, breaking new gardens out of hard clay and old pasture, almost nothing touched it. It was the machine you bought when you were serious about the soil. And most people scrolling past a rusty one at a farm auction today have absolutely no idea what a beast they're looking at. Number 9. The Graham-Paige Rototiller. Here's the bankrupt car company I promised you in the intro, and this one is genuinely strange. Back in 1932, an American automobile pioneer named C.W. Kelsey, full name Cadwallader Washburn Kelsey, founded a company in New York called Rototiller Inc. He'd been importing Swiss-designed, German-made earth grinders, registered the trademark Rototiller, and started building his own machines. By the 1940s, Rototiller Inc. was making everything from big commercial units down to smaller garden models. But in 1944, right in the middle of the war years, Rototiller Inc. did something clever. They signed an agreement with the Graham-Paige Motors Corporation, yes, the car manufacturer, to build the large heavy-duty tillers under license and sell them under the Rototiller trademark. Graham-Paige would handle the big machines, and Rototiller Inc. could focus its own energy on the smaller home garden models that were about to explode in popularity. Think about how bizarre that is. Graham-Paige was an automaker. They built passenger cars, and here they were cranking out agricultural rotary tillers on the side. It was a wartime and post-war world where factories pivoted to whatever the country needed, and America needed to grow food. Victory gardens, small farms, self-sufficiency. The demand for soil-working machines was enormous. The Graham-Paige built rototillers were the muscle of the lineup. The larger machines meant for people cultivating serious acreage, not just a backyard vegetable patch. They kept the Rototiller name alive on the heavy end of the market while the parent company chased the future. And that's exactly why this machine is forgotten. It was a footnote, a licensing deal, a temporary handshake between a tiller company and a car company. The Graham-Paige name faded. The big commercial machines got replaced by cheaper, lighter home units, and the whole chapter basically vanished from memory. But for a few years in the 1940s, if you bought one of the big rototillers, there's a real chance the badge on your soil machine came from a company that also built automobiles. That's the kind of history that gets bulldozed by time, and almost nobody remembers it happened. Number 8. The Merry Tiller. Some machines are famous. The Merry Tiller was durable, which is a different and rarer kind of legendary. The Merry Tiller traces back to the late 1940s. The product and company took shape around 1947, and it's credited to a designer named Clayton Merry, who built one of the first chain-drive front-tine tillers. That chain-drive design is the whole story. Instead of belts that slip and wear, Power went through a chain running in an oil bath inside a cast gearbox, driving the tines out front. Simple, stout, almost impossible to kill. And people did not kill them. Go on any old equipment forum and you'll find folks running merry tillers that are 60, 70 years old, still chewing through gardens every spring. The running joke is that the gearboxes leaked oil like crazy. Owners just learned to keep them topped up, but the core machine simply would not quit. Most of them were powered by a straightforward Briggs & Stratton engine, the kind you can rebuild on a kitchen table. The merry tiller was so respected that it crossed the Atlantic. In Britain, it was built under license and sold as the Wolseley Merry Tiller, produced by Wolseley Engineering in Birmingham, England, the same industrial lineage that had once been tangled up with early British motoring. Over the years, the British versions spawned a whole family of variants, majors, professionals, titans, each one a little beefier than the last. Here's the tell for how good the design was. The transmissions were so trusted that they showed up in tillers wearing other brand names too. When your gearbox is good enough that competitors want it, you've built something special. And the ultimate proof, in 1991, decades after it first appeared, the Merry Tiller was acquired by another long-running American manufacturer and kept in production, because you don't retire a machine that people are still fighting to buy. Today you can walk past a Merry Tiller at a yard sale for $50 and never realize you're looking at one of the toughest garden machines ever built. That's a forgotten legend hiding in plain sight. Number 7. The Rotoiller Model T. Now we get to the machine that quietly did something revolutionary. It made the rotary tiller affordable. Back up a second. When C.W. Kelsey started importing those Swiss and German earth grinders in the 1930s, they were monsters. Big, heavy, cast-iron machines with steel wheels, designed for 4 to 10 acre farms. They were expensive, and they were built for serious operators. A regular family with a backyard garden had no business owning one, and no way to pay for one. Kelsey and his engineers in Troy, New York knew that was the wall they had to break. So through the 1940s, the company poured its effort into designing a better, cheaper, smaller machine. In 1947, they released the compact Rotoette, which sold for around $360. Good, but still a chunk of money. Then in 1949 came the machine that changed the math. The Rotoiller Model T, and the number that matters is the price tag, $194.50. Compared to the heavy commercial units that came before, that was a stunning drop. Suddenly a rotary tiller wasn't a farmer's capital investment. It was something a homeowner could actually justify buying. That price point cracked the market wide open. Just a few years later, in 1952, the company followed up with the Model 2 and Model 3, expanding the family of small, home-friendly tillers. The whole strategy had shifted. Stop chasing big farms, start serving the millions of ordinary gardeners who wanted to skip the shovel. And there's a beautiful piece of trivia buried here. The man credited inside the company with inventing the Model T rototiller, a factory guy named George Dunn, would go on to help create an even more famous machine a decade later. We'll get to that one soon, and once you know the connection, you'll never look at it the same way. The Model T doesn't get statues, but it's arguably the pivot point where rotary tilling stopped being industrial and started being personal. It handed the power of the machine to the everyday gardener, and that quiet democratization is exactly the kind of history that gets forgotten while flashier machines get remembered. Number 6. The Howard Bantam. To understand this next machine, you have to understand the man whose name is on it, because he's the reason any of these machines exist at all. The rotary tiller as we know it was born in Australia. A farmer's son named Arthur Clifford Howard, Cliff Howard, started experimenting with rotary tillage back in 1912 on his father's farm in New South Wales. He rigged a drive from his dad's steam tractor engine and discovered something huge. You could mechanically chew up soil without packing it down hard the way a traditional plow did. His genius stroke was inventing an L-shaped blade on a rotating shaft that broke the ground cleanly instead of just flinging it sideways. Howard turned that idea into an empire. He built companies in Australia and then in 1938 moved to England and founded Rotary Hose Limited in Essex, the operation that would become the world-famous Howard Rotavator Company. That trademark, Rotavator, is so perfect it's also one of the longest palindromes in the English language. Spell it backwards, it's the same word. But here's the Bantam's story. Howard didn't just build giant farm implements. As gardening demand grew, the company shrank its technology down into small, single-axle walk-behind machines for ordinary people. And the little Howard Bantam was one of those, a compact rotavator running a small engine, taking Cliff Howard's world-changing rotary principle and putting it into a size a home gardener could push around a vegetable plot. The proof of how far this reached? There are Howard Bantam advertisements aimed at the American market dating to 1952. This was a genuinely global machine. Howard's company opened branches in the United States, South Africa, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Brazil, and beyond. The Bantam was the friendly, pint-sized ambassador of an invention that started with a curious kid and a steam engine on an Australian farm 40 years earlier. Most people who've heard of a rotavator have no idea the whole concept came from one Australian inventor, and that his empire once reached all the way down to a little garden machine you could lift into a truck. The Bantam is the forgotten small end of one of the most important agricultural inventions of the 20th century. Number 5. The Trojan Horse. This is the plot twist of the whole list, because one of the most famous garden machines in American history spent its early years wearing a completely different name, and almost nobody remembers it. Remember the Rototiller company in Troy, New York, Kelsey's operation? By the late 1950s it had been sold off, bounced between owners and nearly lost. In 1959 a company bought a controlling interest and moved it. Then it changed hands again. It looked like the end. But in October 1961, a group of former employees from the Troy plant, the people who actually knew how to build these machines, bought the operation back and brought it home to Troy. They renamed the company Watco Machine Products, and they built a new machine, a rugged rear-tine walk-behind tiller they called the Trojan Horse. Now remember George Dunn, the man credited with inventing the old Model T rototiller. He's also credited with inventing the Trojan Horse. Same engineering DNA, a decade later, now perfected into a rear tine design where the engine sat up front over powered wheels and the tines churned behind, giving the operator control and letting the machine do the brutal work. They sold it through national mail order and it took off. But then came the legal drama. In 1968, a corporation called Eaton, Yale & Town challenged the Trojan Horse trademark. Watco had to change the name. So they picked a new one honoring the machine's hometown of Troy, New York, and the Troy-Bilt brand was born on June 4, 1968. The company itself was renamed Garden Way Manufacturing. So here's the mind bender. The legendary Troy-Bilt Horse, one of the most respected rear tine tillers ever made, a machine people still hunt down and restore today, literally started life as the Trojan Horse, built by ex-employees who refused to let their little company die. The name everyone knows only exists because of a trademark fight, and the original name almost totally forgotten. That's a piece of soil history hiding right under a badge millions of people recognize. Number 4. The Howard Gem. If the Bantam was Howard's small ambassador, the Howard Gem was its beating heart, the machine that became the definitive British walk-behind rotavator for generations of smallholders, market gardeners, and estate workers. The Gem was a serious piece of kit. This wasn't a lightweight you'd wheel out for a flower bed. It was a hefty, self-propelled two-wheel machine built to work all day, every day, turning over gardens and small fields across post-war Britain. And it evolved constantly. The Gem ran through multiple series, from the early versions right up through Series 5, each one refined and toughened based on what the last one taught them. The powertrain is where the Gem earned its fearsome reputation. Later Gems were fitted with Howard's own big 810cc twin-cylinder engine, producing somewhere in the range of 9 to 12 horsepower depending on configuration, a genuinely powerful unit for a walk-behind machine. And then came the ultimate version, the Super Gem, which could be ordered with a diesel engine. Diesel power in a walk-behind rotavator meant torque, fuel economy, and an engine that would outlive its owner. Restored Super Gem diesels are treasured by collectors today. What makes the Gem special isn't just the specs, it's what it represented. In Britain, getting a Howard in to break new ground was simply what you did. The Gem was the trusted tool of the serious grower, the machine that turned rough plots into productive soil across the whole country. It was heavy, it was demanding to handle, and if the tines caught a buried root it could buck like an angry animal. But it worked, and it kept working for decades. The Howard company that built it was eventually absorbed into larger groups, and by the mid-1980s the original operation had passed through receivership and new ownership. The Gem faded from showrooms, but out in the countryside thousands of them kept running, and a whole subculture of enthusiasts still keeps them alive. The Gem is the forgotten workhorse behind countless British gardens, the machine that quietly did the heavy lifting while flashier brands got the attention. Number 3. The BCS two-wheel tractor. Now we cross into the 1970s and to a machine that arrived in America and made the local competition look like toys. The story starts in Italy in 1943, right in the middle of the war, when a brilliant engineer named Luigi Castoldi was working out of a small workshop in Abbiategrasso, a farming town near Milan. Castoldi built a self-propelled sickle bar mower, one of the first of its kind in the world, and it was a hit. That machine launched the company we know as BCS. The C in the name comes from Castoldi himself. For years BCS built mowers, but by the late 1960s the company had developed something more ambitious, a light multi-purpose two-wheel tractor, a single power unit you could bolt all kinds of implements to. And when those machines were first imported into North America in the early 1970s, they landed at the perfect moment. Americans were rediscovering vegetable gardening and self-sufficiency, and here was a walk-behind tractor built to the same commercial standards as a full-sized farm tractor. Here's why it embarrassed the competition. Most American home market tillers of the day were rear-tine machines, good, but essentially one-trick tools. The BCS was different. It was a true tractor. The gears and shafts ran hardened steel in an oil bath on ball bearings, transferring power with almost no loss. And it had a genuinely brilliant party trick. You could rotate the handlebars a full 180 degrees, flip the bars around, and your walk-behind tiller instantly became a walk-behind mower, with the implement now out front where you wanted it. One machine, tiller 1 minute, sickle bar mower the next, ready to cut brush on a slope no rider mower could touch. For homesteaders and rural property owners, that versatility was a revelation. A BCS could till the garden, mow the pond bank, cut under fences, and handle a dozen other jobs, all from one durable Italian-built core that would run for decades. It quietly became the gold standard for people who took their land seriously, and it's still made today. Most weekend gardeners have never heard of it. The ones who own one never shut up about it. Number 2. The Mantis Tiller. Here's the second machine I teased at the very start, the one that weighed just 20 pounds, and when it launched, the entire industry laughed at it. Picture the world of tillers before 1980. Every single one was a big, heavy, bulky beast. Running a tiller was exhausting, two-fisted, muscle-aching work. Turning over a garden meant wrestling a machine that fought you the whole way. That was just how it was. Everyone accepted it. Then in 1980, at a factory in Southampton, Pennsylvania, a company introduced something that looked absurd. The Mantis Tiller/cultivator. It was tiny, it was bright red, and it weighed a grand total of about 20 pounds, light enough to pick up with one hand and carry from the garage to the garden like a briefcase. Competitors took one look and dismissed it as a novelty, a garden toy, cute, but surely useless for real work. They were spectacularly wrong. The secret was in the tines. The Mantis used a patented serpentine design that spun fast and bit into the soil with shocking aggression for such a small machine. You'd pull the cord, drop it into the dirt, and this little 20-pound gadget would chew through even hard-packed ground with ease. It genuinely delivered. It took the back-breaking strain out of tilling, and it did it in a package a person of almost any age or strength could handle. That changed who could garden. Suddenly, the millions of people who were unwilling or physically unable to wrestle a giant rototiller could break their own soil, weed, edge, furrow, and cultivate, because the machine came to them instead of demanding they conquer it. And it was versatile. Swap attachments and one Mantis could do the work of many separate tools. The awards piled up. The toy conquered North America, and in the 1990s it crossed into Europe, where gardeners embraced it exactly the same way. Decades later, it's been built on the very same production line, sold to well over 1 million happy owners worldwide. The Mantis proved that the future of the tiller wasn't bigger and heavier. It was smaller, smarter, and lighter, and the whole industry that laughed at it eventually had to follow it. Number 1. The Honda Komame F210. And here we are at number 1, the machine that closed out our era and set the standard everything after it had to chase. By the early 1980s, the tiller world had a new challenger, and it came from a company that had already conquered motorcycles and cars, Honda. Honda understood something the old guard American and British builders sometimes took for granted, that ordinary people didn't want to fight their equipment. They wanted a machine that started on the first pull, ran quietly, sipped fuel, and never let them down. Honda's answer was its compact tiller line nicknamed the Komame. The first, the F200, ran a small side valve engine and sold strongly. But the one that defined the formula arrived in 1984, the Komame F210. It was light, it was compact, it was easy to handle, and it was built around a new 4-stroke engine that delivered quiet, stable, stubbornly reliable power, with a redesigned muffler that made it noticeably calmer to run than the shaking, roaring machines of the past. The F210 was smart in ways that seem obvious now but weren't back then. It had an adjustable tilling width, so you could match it to the job. It had adjustable handle height, so it fit the operator instead of forcing the operator to hunch. There were specialized versions tuned for orchards, tea plantations, and greenhouses. Some even came with a cell motor starter, electric starting on a garden tiller, decades before that was normal. Every choice was about removing friction between the human and the soil. That relentless focus on refinement is why Honda's little tiller became a quiet phenomenon, especially across Asia, where compact, dependable 4-stroke tillers transformed how small plots were worked. And it's why the 4-stroke engine, clean, quiet, efficient, became the heart of nearly every quality home tiller that followed. When you buy a modern garden tiller today and it just works, no smoke, no drama, first pull, you're living in the world the Komame helped build. The Honda didn't win by being the biggest or the most powerful, it won by being the most trustworthy. And in the long war between all these machines, the Gravely's brute force, the Trojan Horse's grit, the Mantis's cleverness, reliability is the weapon that ultimately conquered everyone's garage. That's why it's number one. If you've ever owned one of these, or if there's a machine you think we missed, drop it in the comments. I read them and the soil history rabbit hole goes way deeper than 10. And if you want to see more forgotten machines that secretly changed the world, hit subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is about. Now get out there and turn some dirt.